Hello and welcome to today's presentation. We're going to be talking about book publishing with the Wolfram language. My name is Paige Villarolo. I do work for Wolfram Research and specifically with the Wolfram Media team that works on publishing books. Couple of housekeeping items to get started. I already placed a download link for the slide deck in the chat feature of the platform, so you can go ahead and download that. I think the events team is going to distribute it afterwards as well, but just to be sure you can have it if you're interested, you can download with that link. Also, as I go through, if you have any questions come up, please use the Q&A panel rather than chat. I'll check that at the end and try to get to as many as I can. And if I don't have time for some reason, I can contact you afterwards through the networking features in the conference platform. So a quick overview of what we'll discuss today. I'm going to give an introduction to Wolfram Media. Then I'll move on to talking about options for publishing your own Wolfram language work. I'll introduce our WolframBookTools palette for authoring, and then I'll explain a couple of features that are new in the palette since last year's tech conference. So Wolfram Media, for those of you that don't know, is the publishing unit of Wolfram Research. We focus on publishing books that showcase and promote Wolfram technology. So that's the unifying feature of all of our books. They do all promote the technology. We publish all of Stephen Wolfram's books, and we also publish books from other internal as well as external authors. We are a traditional publisher, so that means when we do work with an external author, we typically have a royalty-based contract with that author. We publish books in print, then kind of your more traditional static ebook formats, think like Kindle and Apple Books. And we're also venturing out into publishing in a more interactive ebook format where the final published format is actually a Wolfram notebook. So we're excited about that. My team, the Wolfram Media team, is pretty small. There's only 3 of us that work exclusively full-time on books. But we do have the benefit being part of Wolfram Research that we get to work with other teams within the company, like our design team, our internal editing staff that we call DQA, and many other departments throughout the company. So if we're working on a book publishing project with you, we do get the chance to get that through lots of hands at our company. I want to spend just a couple of minutes talking about what's new from Wolfram Media in this past year since last tech conference. There on the left side of your screen, we have Predicting the Eclipse by Stephen Wolfram. That came out in time for the 2024 solar eclipse that crossed North America in April. So we're really excited for that. The book includes maps of where the eclipse was going to be visible from, and also a lot of computation of how to use Wolfram language to compute different features of eclipses. So of course, all of that information is relevant for future eclipses as well as the one that's already happened now. There's an appendix in the back of the book that explains upcoming eclipses and where those can be seen as well. The next 2 books on the screen, we're really excited this year we got to launch our Wolfram textbook series. It's something we've been building up to for a while now. The idea of the series is that our own internal R&D experts are writing books that take fields that are already out there, already established. You can see calculus here on the screen, for example, and gives the computational approach, and specifically the Wolfram language approach. So that's going to be the unifying factor for that series. It's going to be all books on different topics and introducing how to use computation to kind of transfer the rote calculation work onto the machines and get the humans thinking about the higher level things. So we did start with the calculus book. That one's already out. The signal systems and signal processing book that you see on the screen is going to be the next one that will come out very shortly. And we have several others lined up that we're excited to bring you guys. All of those books in the series are published first in the interactive Wolfram notebook format. Those are available for free download from our website. As they come out, they will be. The calculus ones are already available. So we're excited about that because it means that users can copy the code over into their own notebook right away and work with it. So instead of the old model of let's read a book and then go to our computer and try out the code, it's now happening all at once. So you can have readers who are experiencing, running, and manipulating the code as they read the book. There's dynamic features available. Students can play with sliders and all sorts of things. So we think it's going to be a really useful way for people to learn the technology as they read the book. Okay. As promised, I'm going to go over the options for publishing your own Wolfram Language work. I know a lot of you guys have exciting projects that you're working on. Maybe you've used Wolfram Language for years, maybe you're brand new. But either way, maybe you're thinking about, hey, I've got this cool idea, I've got this cool project, I'd like to publish it, and maybe a book is the right format. So if you're thinking along those lines, we do have 3 options for publishing your Wolfram Language work as a book. The first one is full service publishing. This is probably what's immediately coming to mind. It's kind of the most traditional method. Here on the screen, I have Seth Chandler's book Query, which came out in 2023. So that's an example of this full service publishing model. And what that means is we are your publisher beginning to end. We're going to evaluate your manuscript. If we decide to take it on, we'll do an academic review. We'll do internal in-house editing. We'll do page layouts. We'll do promotion. We'll do distribution. We're your editors. We're your book production team. You know, we are your publisher beginning to end. And typically that would be under a royalty-based contract with an external author. And we would, you know, consider a case-by-case basis what formats to publish in. In this case, for Seth Chandler's book, we published in print, Kindle, and downloadable notebooks. And we're also working on an HTML-based website. So that's going to vary project to project. This method is great for some projects. It is really time consuming. Like I said, we only have 3 people working full-time on books, and sometimes other projects are in line ahead of yours. But with us or with another publisher for traditional publishing, you should expect at least 18 months for your book to get published. So just be aware of that. Option number 2 is us supporting you while you work with another publisher. So this screenshot here comes from our wolfram.com/books site. That's a website where we make our best attempt to keep track of all books that are published with a focus on Wolfram language, whether we publish them or someone else published them. So you can see in this example, Pearson is the publisher. We don't get jealous. We're not mad that you didn't publish with us. We think it's great to get Wolfram language content out into the world, no matter who's publishing it. So if you work with another publisher, it's totally up to you to negotiate your contract. We're going to stay out of that. That's between you and your other publisher. But we are available to provide assistance. Maybe you need some troubleshooting with your code or help with pagination, and we can assist with that. If it's at a basic level, we are happy to do that for free as support to whatever license you're working under. And if it becomes more involved, you need a little more assistance from our end, that is when we'd start talking about a paid consulting relationship. But again, that's just going to be on a case-by-case basis. So the third, before I move on to the third option, I say here the support for working with other publishers. I do recognize that in today's world, self-publishing is becoming more and more of a legitimate option. So if you're self-publishing and you are doing so with a serious audience in mind, you know, this is not just, you know, your project for your friends, but this has a serious audience available, we'd be willing to provide that same type of support. Now we're ready for option number 3. And that is us providing support for adding your book to the Wolfram store. So in this method, the final published version of the book, the final published format of the book is Wolfram Notebooks. In this method also, the author is 100% responsible for preparing the file. So basically, you're going to deliver to us the file that you want us to put on the store. So you're responsible for graphic design, editing, layouts, everything. I do recommend that you work with freelance professionals on some of that stuff, especially editing. I think every book could benefit from an external editor who's not the author. But this is a cool publishing model for a few reasons. One is that, like I said before, it's great that we're now publishing in Wolfram notebook format. It makes the content more interactive. Users can experience the technology while they're learning the content, and that's great. Another reason why this option is great is that you're much more in control of the timeline. There's less work on our end, more work on your end. So you're more in the driver's seat. And that brings me to what is it that we do if you deliver the final file to us. We provide signing the notebook, which basically means we lock down your original version so that users cannot edit and overwrite your original. They can edit and save their own copy, or they can copy and paste content out into their own notebook and work with it there. In your original copy of the content, any dynamic content like manipulates and sliders and things like that will work and be available to the users. They wouldn't need to make their own copy for that. Basically, the signing feature is just so that nobody could, make an edit in your book, save it, close it, come back a week later, and then confuse themselves because the content's no longer accurate. So we sign it, and then we also provide our poor man's DRM. What it is style sheet obfuscation, so that you have to buy the book from the store, get credentials, and register it. If you don't, then the style sheet's going to look all funky. So it's not foolproof. Advanced coders can get around it, but that's what we're able to provide for these books added to the Wolfram store. And then when you're setting up your file, kind of sky's the limit for what you want to do. I've got Bruce Schneider's book here on the screen as an example. You can see that he's designed these 3 windows to open up at once. He's got things in here like practice a homework module. It's almost like a little app where you can submit your homework right through it. So that's pretty fancy and interactive. This other one down here is actually one of our Wolfram e-textbooks, but an external author could do something similar. This is more like every chapter is a notebook, and then there's like a nice navigation to navigate through the zip. And there are like sliders that users can play with and things like that in this book as well. Just make sure. Those are our 3 options for how we could help you publish your Wolfram language work. I want to spend the rest of our presentation time talking about the WolframBookTools palette for authoring. So what it is it's a palette that comes with tools that we hope streamline your authoring process and make things a little easier for you in Wolfram language. And it comes with a style sheet to sort of take the guesswork out of, oh, what should I make my text look like? How should I design my items and exercises and all of that? It kind of streamlines that process so that you don't have to fiddle with any of that if you don't want to. I will say the style sheet is not required for you to use unless we're serving as your full service publisher. In that case, we would ask that you use the BookTools style sheet. Otherwise, you're free to use parts of it, use none of it, use what you like, modify the rest. We just hope it's a helpful tool. So if you don't have it, or if you're wondering if yours maybe needs an update, you can always go to our website, wolfram-media.com, and click Author Resources. You'll see this big orange Download Wolfram BookTools button. This is going to work whether you need it for the very first time or if you're trying to update your old version of it. So once you click that orange button and open up the file that downloads, you're going to get this little installer. It's super simple, just the one button on it. Can't mess it up. So you just go ahead and click that Install Update button. The next thing you're going to see is a message asking you to restart Mathematica to complete the installation. You can go ahead and do that. Once you do, you can go to the Palettes menu, and you'll now see that WolframBookTools has appeared amongst whatever other palettes you have. And when you click that from your palettes menu, this is what the palette is basically going to look like. And I will go through a couple of key features on that palette. So if you're brand new to the palette, you've never used it before, I always suggest start with the New Template button. It's the second button down. And when you click it, you will get to open a notebook that looks like this. It just has some toy content plugged into the style sheet so you can see how the different sections function. It's not real content. If you want to see an actual example with real content, you can Google an elementary introduction to Wolfram language and you'll find the free online version of Stephen's book. He did not use the WolframBookTools style sheet, but the style sheet that he used is what we modeled this off of. So they're very similar. You can see how it worked for him. Not every section is going to work for every book. So if you see something that you're like, I just don't understand how that could work for my book, I don't think it would be useful, feel free to skip it. Once you've explored the template a little bit, the next thing to click on is New Chapter, that very first button at the top of the palette. You'll get this really simple dialog where you can put in your chapter number for the order within your book, and then you'll get a notebook that looks like this. So now we're basically ready for you to plug in your own content. You can type over that word chapter with your own chapter title, and you can start typing your text over top of those X's. We do recommend that each chapter be its own notebook. That ends up being useful for a lot of reasons, you know, keeping it from crashing if it gets too long with everything in one notebook, also just organizing your file system. That's typically the way to go. Works nicely if you're making a zip file as well. I'd like to spend a couple minutes going through a few of the features that are in the docked cell that comes at the top of every WolframBookTools style notebook. So the first thing you'll see on the left-hand side is the insert drop-down menu. This has listed out a lot of the more common styles that you might want to use in your notebook. It's not every style that's included in the style sheet. So you can always, you know, insert styles as you would in a regular notebook through the format menu as well. But to use this little insert drop down, super simple. You're just going to use the horizontal insertion bar, place that between cells or at the end of your notebook, wherever you want your new cell to be. And then you'll click insert and pick your type of cell. So in this example, we are picking code text. And that will give you a new cell with the code text style applied. You can just type right over those X's. And what code text is, we always encourage authors to use it, is a little one-line, very concise summary of this is what the code I'm about to show you is doing. That tends to be very useful for readers, so we do recommend that you use it. And you'll see that it's styled a little bit differently than regular text, so it stands out to a reader. It has this sans serif gray instead of the serif black font of regular text. So right after your code text, we'd recommend that you enter your code. Input is the default style cell, just like it is in your regular default style notebook. So you don't need to use the insert drop-down menu. You can just go ahead and put your horizontal insertion bar and start typing, and that will be input. Just like in a default style notebook, Shift Enter evaluates your input and creates your output. So you're already off and running, and that's kind of the basics of how you can start using this style sheet. I gave a longer presentation at last year's tech conference where I went into more detail on all the different or most of the different styles available from the insert drop-down menu and how they might be used. I'm not going to do that today, but if you download the slide deck, you can click this link to see last year's presentation if that's something that interests you. I'm going to spend a couple of minutes going over a few of the other features of the docked cell at the top of the notebook, and mostly to indicate how to style code within text, which also works for code text, exercises, or other text-based cell types. So if you're using a Wolfram language, built-in Wolfram language function name, like I have plot in this example, in your text, you can highlight just the Wolfram language function name, click function name, and then choose link from that little mini drop-down menu. You'll immediately see that it's applied the sans serif formatting. That's so that a reader can read through the sentence and immediately know, oh, plot is a Wolfram language function, not just a word in here. So it's a little visual indicator. And the other cool part is that if you click this link button, it's already automatically linked to our documentation page. So maybe you're writing a book that is not about how plot works or about the options that are available for plot, but you are using plot, and some of your readers might not be familiar and might like to get some additional background info. That link is a really great way to send them to our documentation page. You know, you don't have to recreate the wheel with typing all of that out. They can just visit that, especially if you're publishing in an electronic format. You know, all those links can carry over and people can use them very easily. That only works for built-in Wolfram language function names. If you want to do the same exact thing, but for something in the resource function repository, you can highlight that and click resource function link. And that will take you to the page for the respective function on the Wolfram function repository. Inline code works the same way. You know, you just highlight whatever you want to format. That's for cases where it's not a function name of any kind. It's just something that's also supposed to be code so that it can visually stand out to your readers. Again, if you want more info on using the other items in this docked cell that we didn't go over, I did spend a little more time on that in last year's presentation, so I'd recommend that you take a look at that. Okay. I don't know if anyone was able to attend the presentation last year or if everyone's new this year, but I did want to spend a few minutes going over what's new in the WolframBookTools palette since last year's tech conference. So one item that I'm really excited about, in addition to some minor bug fixes that have been made over the last year, is the Compare Notebooks feature. This button was already here, but it used to link to a different tool called Author Tools. Now it links to Diff Tools, which I prefer. If you're working on a book project, maybe you have a co-author or an editor or someone else who's looking at your files, or maybe you just, forgot when you made an edit. It can be really, really helpful to be able to compare two versions of the same notebook if you're running into any type of version control issue, or if you need to see specifically what edits were made. So that's what Compare Notebooks does. If you click it, it's going to open up this little dialog. You just select the two notebooks that you want it to compare, and then you can pick some options here about how you want it to compare the notebooks. Once you click Compare Notebooks, it will open up a notebook diff report. This is a screenshot of what that's going to look like. And at the bottom, there's this little summary box, which might be really helpful. Maybe you gave it two notebooks that you're actually hoping there are no changes between. You're just verifying. So this would be a quick place where you could see, okay, have there been any edits, yes or no? In this example, obviously there have been. There's 5 edits, 3 insertions, 2 deletions. This middle part here is where it details what those edits are. So I have a screenshot here of an example of if you click one of these little arrows, but it will expand and show you exactly what the change is. So in this example, visualize used to be italic and now it's Roman. So it does pick up even kind of those smaller level changes, which can be really helpful. If you're trying to make sure that your version is what you thought it is, it has the edits in it that you wanted it to have. My team did not create diff tools. We just were able to integrate that functionality into the book tools palette because we think it'll be really helpful for authors. But if you want to read more about diff tools itself and more expansive ways it can be used too, I recommend checking out the page for it in the Packlet repository. Also new this year in WolframBookTools is this toggle between new page interactive and non-interactive. So it's in kind of that subtle gray text at the bottom in the middle of those 3 options. If it's set to non-interactive and you click it once, it will toggle to interactive and vice versa. But if it's on non-interactive and you click new chapter, you'll get this very simple dialogue like we saw earlier in the presentation where you just put your chapter number. If you set it to interactive and click new chapter, you might get this dialog that pops up and says you need to set your draft chapter directory. So the little gray line right above the interactive line says set draft chapter directory. If you click that, you'll just be taken to your Finder and you can see your files in your browser and determine which folder you want to be the location where you're saving all of your chapter notebooks. So once you've set that, if you have this set as new page interactive and click new chapter, you'll get this more expansive dialog box where you can set your title and your file name. And then once you click OK, this is automatically saving that new notebook in your files with your other chapters. So it's kind of a small change, but it is helpful for streamlining the process and just making it a little bit more organized, easier to keep track of your files. So once you hit OK, if you've done this interactive version, you'll get a notebook that opens up that already has your chapter name set, already has your file name, which becomes the window title, and is already saved in that directory. So that can be really useful just for staying organized and keeping all your files saved in one place. That's also important, having everything in one directory. If you want to use some of the other features on the palette, like make contents, again, that is something that I detailed a little bit more last year that I won't go into this year. But yes, hopefully this interactive new page option helps you guys keep everything organized while you work on your book projects. That's about all I have for today's presentation. I do recommend that everyone click this link when you download the slide deck to sign up for updates from Wolfram Media. That'll give us the chance to let you know when we have a new book out or if we have any new tools available for authors. There's some other contact info on there, but I'll spend our last couple minutes checking to see if anyone had any questions. Okay, I don't see any questions yet. If anyone wants to hang around and put in a question, I'll keep an eye out. Otherwise, thank you for listening, and I hope you guys wish you best of luck with your book projects.
Paige, I think there was one in chat, maybe Anton kind of asked.
The one that says I want to publish some of my books as Packlets.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I think that's an interesting idea. Yeah, I don't see why it couldn't be done, publishing them in the Packlet repository. I know some authors have also done some things publishing in the notebook repository. It of course depends. Do you want to make your materials available for free, which I think a lot of authors, are willing to do nowadays. I think notebook repository is an option. From your own website's an option. There's a lot of good work being done to build up the various repositories, so I think that could be an interesting one. I think Packlet repository is usually for a set of functions. So if that is applicable to your book, that might be even more appropriate. Someone asked, what's the most popular book from Wolfram Media? Over the last year and a half, it's definitely been Stephen's What is ChatGPT Doing and Why Does It Work book. So I think that one's been great for kind of reaching a general interest audience. If you haven't read it yet, I would check it out. It's a very short book. It's only 112 pages and does a pretty good job explaining not just ChatGPT, but how LLMs work in general. Somebody asked, I have a large number of notebooks I have developed for my class. Would the book publishing tools be useful for those, i.e. to make them more professional? Possibly, yeah. If you already have a format that you liked, you don't need to convert them. But yeah, it's a style sheet that's available to you. And if you find it useful, we'd be happy for you to use it. Are these kinds of booklets going to have promotion or support from Mirai? I'm not sure I know which books you were referring to in that question. If it's the zip files on our web store, we try to do maybe a little bit of promotion with maybe mentioning in a blog, or if you want to post a blog or a community post, but the marketing is really on the authors for that type of project.
Then it looks like someone did ask one in the QA about the way to consume a notebook is by the Wolfram player then, right?
Oh, great question. Both. Most of our downloadable zip files can be accessed through Wolfram Player or Mathematica. We have had some authors who, they are a professor at a school that has a site license and all of their students use Mathematica, so they've written more for that audience. And then we have authors who've written thinking, most of their audience isn't going to have a Mathematica license and their content works great in Player. So yeah, it's kind of up to the author, but most of the books that we've published in this way would be available through both. And your reader would just be limited in that they couldn't copy and paste the cells into their own notebook and work with them if they only have Player. But they could still use all the sliders and things like that. All right, I think we are up on time, and I think we got to all the questions.
Yeah, I didn't see any other ones either.
All right, thank you guys.